Alex Rubin. I'm a project engineer for Sentrian.
I'm Robert Wilkinson and I'm the head of business development.
A lot of people used to Optus and Telstra for their business phones. What's the new wave that's popular?
I think historically you didn't have too many choices when it came to phone system providers.
Like two?
Yeah, Telstra's and your Optus's, and they were the only ones that could technically deliver solutions.
Yep.
And that's changed fairly significantly over the past 10 to 20 years. And there are a lot of companies who can provide a better service in terms of a person-to-person service as well as a better telephone service than what the incumbent carriers can.
Where are they going to then?
It's gone from physical wires that come into your office, and now it's all hosted. So it's all software that's run out of a cloud, and all of the wires have been turned into what's called SIP channels. And SIP channels are like a virtual wire.
Okay.
And it means that those virtual wires can go anywhere. They can be attached to any software PBX. And in the case of Teams calling, it can be attached to your existing Teams tenant that everyone's already well familiar with, and you can start making and receiving calls from Teams.
So in summary, it's been virtualized into the cloud instead of having hard lines and cables and stuff.
I feel as us as a provider as well is we offer a lot more personalised service compared to the major carriers, where they're focused on a standardised system, whereas nowadays with calling capabilities, a lot of customers are after a much more complex and tailored design to their business needs, which we can offer.
And what do you mean by that? Like, isn't a phone? Like, you call someone, you get a
Technically,
call
no.
back?
There's a lot more you can do with a phone system nowadays, whether it is email notifications throughout the call flow and integration into other applications such as Dynamics and your CRM and things like that we can integrate our calling solutions into to provide a much more streamlined and effective system.
So as a small business, I could get what those big guys do with automated answering and then sort of routing that to certain departments.
Correct.
And all that kind of
Yep.
stuff.
To mobiles, to hand over to external calling services, to transcribing into emails. It's all possible nowadays.
Creating tickets into project management systems or sales CRMs would be pretty good too for sales calls.
So we do CRM integrations straight into Teams calling as well, where we can import all their contacts and then we can write back information to their CRM with a combination of applications that all integrate into our calling solutions.
Also thinking like call prioritization is a big one for me. Like I know I want people who are just spamming with phone calls to maybe go to one person or one process, and then the red hot deals to go to a high priority kind of owner of the business or something like that versus everything else in the middle.
We can definitely do all of that. All of that prioritization and calling hunt groups and things like that. We can tailor to exactly what the customer needs.
Okay, so didn't this used to be called VoIP or something, like VoIP?
It technically still is VoIP. It still is transmitting the voice protocol over IP or instant protocols, but we're still running it as a SIP channel, so it still is a standalone call service.
Can you just go through the history actually, because this is interesting. I know Rob, you touched on it. We started with, seeing the 50s, people plugging in jacks into these telephone exchanges. I know we've gone from there to copper wiring systems, and then we went from that to more of an internet-based thing with our phones now cordless or mobiles. Can you just give us a quick summary of where we are?
I should say it started off with the olden days where there was actual switchboard, where there were a bunch of people sitting in front of this board and they plugged one wire into the other to make a physical connection between two locations.
Yep.
And over time that got upgraded so that computers made the connections virtually between the different locations, but it was still over physical wires. After that came the voice over IP revolution, I guess, where you would have still a physical PBX in most cases, but the PBX was connected to a network which then virtualized those lines between the different locations until finally we've got to the point where almost everything is virtualized. And in fact in Australia, VoIP is every connection now. So since the NBN has come on board, everything is VoIP, regardless whether it's your home system or your office system, everything is VoIP. The differences are the software that allows you to do things with those calls. That's the difference between a home VoIP and an office VoIP.
Okay, great, because I know a lot of people have had this issue with VoIP being a bit like, how do we say, low quality, or there's delays when you say something and then they hear it, sort of like a long distance phone call. And I know it has a bit of negative connotations of people who maybe used Skype like 5-10 years ago. And I think that's going to be like that. What would you say to that?
Skype for Business was definitely a flop on Microsoft's behalf. You do not see any more of that existing. It all has been committed to Teams.
Yeah.
In terms of the actual data usage, we have custom sets on our audio codecs. So we can tune higher quality audio, lower quality audio. But in terms of the actual amount of data being used required to transmit a high quality audio through our Teams calling systems is very, very minimal. We're talking like kilobytes per second.
Oh, wow.
The requirements for it is all very compressed to get a really high voice quality over a small amount of data.
So even if I was tethering my phone remotely using virtual calling on my computer, remote location, that'd be pretty crisp.
You would be fine. Yep, completely fine.
Okay.
I think, historically where VoIP has potentially fallen down is when virtual PBXs were provisioned, they weren't provisioned with enough resources because they wanted to make them as cheap as possible. And that has caused voice quality problems. Also, historically, when the internet was not particularly fast or reliable, then that obviously has an impact as well. And with the advent of NBN for home users, it's much more reliable and much quicker. And with proper corporate connections like Ethernet services, then you get much, much better service quality. So the lines, the virtual lines that it travels over are much, much better quality.
What is a PBX, by the way, just because I actually don't know?
It's a phone-based exchange.
Okay.
So it's like a virtual old-school exchange, just purely virtualized.
Okay,
so
great.
So when you call a number, it knows where to go, who to connect to, and which hops and hoops to jump through to reach the other end.
What is a SIP? Because you mentioned the SIP channels. Do we need to know what that is or not?
Yeah, so a SIP channel is a virtual phone wire.
Okay.
For lack of a better word.
Calling channel.
And you use that to like configure the thing.
That's how we tunnel the calls in. So each customer will have a dedicated amount of SIP channels, and that will allow how many concurrent calls they'll allow through their calling system.
I see. Okay. So it's not almost a capacity.
Correct.
Okay.
So historically, if you had 5 wires coming into your PBX, you would now have 5 virtual SIP channels.
Okay, this makes sense. Is this cheaper? Like, why haven't more people switched over?
Yes, generally speaking, it's significantly cheaper.
Like, how much cheaper would it be?
We've had a customer recently who saved 58% from their traditional PBX VoIP setup when they've moved to Teams calling. And that's fairly representative.
Okay, and what is this Teams calling everyone keeps mentioning? What is that?
So Teams calling, if you've used Teams before to have internal meetings, join meetings and things like that, we pretty much convert that into a virtual calling system. So you can make outbound and inbound calls straight from your calling interface, which therefore integrates with everything else that most businesses are using within the 365 suite. So we can set up a full call flow and call queue to come straight into your client.
Okay, so this is Microsoft Teams, and then what it reactivates? It activates a feature of that what we would normally have access to?
Correct.
Okay.
With some additional 365 licensing and configuration, we can enable that to essentially be a virtual mobile or phone line coming into your computer.
Okay, this is interesting because I probably want to get this and use this personally. So I just had to have a headset into my laptop, and then I'd have to get a 1300 number or something, or like whatever.
We could get a virtual 1300 number, which then comes into a local business number or call queue, which is then you're a part of that call queue. So you're a user. If someone calls the 1300 number and it goes to your reception, it'll then list out who's my reception users, and it'll call all of their devices. So
even if it's a mobile phone?
Correct. So you can use Teams on your mobile, and therefore you can avoid people exposing their personal mobiles, because a lot of companies nowadays are not providing mobile phones to their employees. Everyone's using their personal mobile, but you don't really want to be calling a client off your personal mobile, so they can open the Teams app on their phone, make a call, and it would be like they're representing the business or calling from the office.
So it would be coming from an 07, 03, 02 number?
It would be just coming from their business number.
Interesting. And then the privacy is protected as well.
Correct.
Okay, I got to use this. And what does this cost money? Like to set up these numbers? Say we want to get another number or whatever. Like, don't we still have to buy that through Telstra, Optus, or something like that? Or?
So us as a Telstra wholesale partner, we can purchase them straight from Telstra. If you do already have existing numbers with other carriers, Vodafone, Internode, things like that, we can just port them from your existing carrier over to our Telstra wholesale service to integrate into Teams.
Just like you would do switching mobile phone carriers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. So there's a process around that. Okay. Oh, well, that makes it easy to switch then. But okay, setting all this up, let's just say I've got a legacy system, we've got all the handsets, whatever, and contracts, and we're with Telstra, Optus, or whatever, and we want to go to this new way of doing things. Like, isn't that a lot of work or not?
No, it is a very simple process. It's just a matter of porting out your existing numbers for your existing carrier. We are a lot more flexible with no fixed term contracts in compared to a lot of the major carriers, and we offer much more personalised service to transition you to a Teams calling platform compared to one of the major players.
Sounds a bit more flexible as well. Like you can really personalise that to your exact needs with different systems and everything, integration.
That's it. We can generally take off all the existing information from their existing call system, so voicemail recordings, greetings, things like that. We can just download those, convert them, and put them straight up into Teams and replicate your existing call system into Teams. And it's just one less application they have to manage, because majority of people are using Teams or Zoom as one of the two big video conferencing.
Yep.
So if they're already using Teams, it's just a matter of integrating it in.
Okay, so it sounds easier than I thought. What about staff? Do they have an issue with adapting or handsets? And
generally not. Most businesses are using Microsoft Suite. So everyone is used to Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and you've got Teams there as part of the package suite. So most businesses now, when they're holding online meetings, are using Teams for those services. So they're familiar with the calling system, the buttons, the configuration, things like that. All we do is just enable an extra feature set on top of that, which allows you to make and receive external calls from the same platform.
Okay, great. So it sounds easier than I thought, actually. Which is
it is very
like
easy.
I'm being genuine about that. Okay, but hang on. Can't we just buy this from Microsoft? Like you said,
you
it's a
can
Microsoft
buy it
product.
directly through Microsoft,
Yeah.
but you are falling out of the custom policies and the custom offerings that we provide. So you can buy the infrastructure from Microsoft, but they won't design and develop your call flow with you, customize things, offer that personalized level of support, whereas that is something that we do.
Okay, what is some...
Typically, it's more expensive as well.
Oh yeah, good point. Okay. So they won't do the config side of things, or...
Generally not.
Okay. So they'll refer you to someone like you
Correct.
guys. Yeah. Okay. What are some interesting use cases or features that are really cutting edge that you've been exposed to that most people wouldn't know was possible? I know we mentioned a couple of the integrations, but is there anything really cool where customers would be like, oh wow, that's awesome?
We have recently developed and implemented the ability to modify your caller ID and call queue on the fly as an end user. So if you do have multiple offices around Australia and a person based in Brisbane wants to call out exposing themselves as their Perth office or Northern Territory office, you can swap around, interchange. We have recently added New Zealand integration as well. So an Australian-based resident can call from a New Zealand number and vice versa. So we are constantly developing new integrations and features that are providing a better service.
What if you've got, say you've hired an outsourcing team, perhaps in the Philippines or India or whatever, to maybe handle some of your custom service calls? Is it easy to integrate them into the system as well, or have people done
Definitely.
that?
No, so we have multiple clients that currently have outsourced staff in India and the Philippines.
Okay.
And we can make them represent like they're calling from the Brisbane office.
Okay.
So there is no problem with doing that. They can be a part of the Brisbane call queue or Australian-based call queue or New Zealand-based call queue, and when they call back a customer, they can represent themselves as that business and that number.
So then your customers aren't getting this weird plus, 64 or whatever
Correct.
numbers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, it used to be a lot more common with the physical phones of people calling from private numbers.
Yeah.
That used to be quite standard.
Yeah.
That is long gone. If 9 times out of 10, if someone sees a call coming in from a private number, you won't answer it.
Yeah, because that whole COVID era with all the spam calls could really ruin that, didn't it? Like I remember just not answering stuff if I didn't recognize the number because it was just so apparent. Yeah. So I think people are like maybe suffering from PTSD from that that era,
Yeah, it's that whole scamming went from emails to mobile phones to SMSs and text messages and phone calls because email security got a lot better, and now we're starting to see phone security get a lot better as well.
Actually, speaking of that, can we use it for SMSs, or does that normally come through like a CRM or something like that?
No, correct. Well, we are implementing a SMS integration into Teams as well, which can send SMSs straight out of your Teams client.
What about call recording? Tell me about that.
So call recording is a new product that we're offering, which allows all calls, external, internal. We can change sort of which calls are being recorded, and we can store them in your Azure tenancy alongside your 365 tenant, and we can put legal holds on them to make them last forever, make them last for 7 years compliance, as related to the data security retention policies of Australia. We can start to use AI to analyse the actual audio of the call, so we can detect if someone's raised their voice, if they've lowered their voice, if the call is overall happy or a good experience. It's great for peer review and development purposes, as well as some AI trickery to remove personalised information from the call. So if someone is taking a payment information over the call, they've said their credit card number, we can remove that from the call recording and that'll be completely wiped before the call record is stored.
Perhaps the same with medical. If they say something like personal medical record, you could...
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you could basically have that enterprise-grade calling center technology for a very low cost for a small business.
Relatively low cost, yes.
Wow. Okay. It just takes a bit of configuration
That's
on your end and
Yep.
talking to you about what they actually need. But the features sound pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot to offer the Teams call. Yeah.